Welcome to the Fit Dad Nation podcast, forging strong fathers and raising a stronger generation. It's time to get up or shut up with your host, Steve Roy.
Hey guys, this is Steve Roy, the host of the Fit Dad Nation podcast. Welcome to the show, and thank you for listening. So before I introduce today's guest, and I've got a pretty fascinating guy with me here today, I just want to take a moment to invite all you dads who are listening right now and who are ready to start taking your health back and start becoming better fathers and better men. I'd ask that you apply to our brotherhood online, and the best way to do that right now is to head over to Facebook. We've got a private group there called the Fit Dad Basecamp, so head over to facebook.com/groups/Fit Dad Basecamp. So today I have with me Scott Carney. Scott's a journalist who's written for publications such as Wired, Playboy, and National Geographic. He's also an anthropologist, a TEDx speaker, and the author of 3 books, which are an investigative journalism trilogy that he says aim to understand how the body, mind, and spirit come together. Those books are The Red Market, A Death on Diamond Mountain, and What Doesn't Kill Us. And so I reached out to Scott for this interview because of the experience he's been through and what he's been able to learn about the human body and its capabilities. And because I work with men for a living and most of us know we're full of excuses, I thought this would make for a fascinating conversation. So Scott, welcome.
Hey,
Thank
Stephen,
you so much
thanks
for
so
being
much
here.
for having me on. It's going to be a blast.
Yeah, you bet. So I was telling you right before we started recording that I kind of feel like I know you already because I started watching and digging into some of your videos, and you have a bunch of different talks, TEDx talks, and different videos explaining some of the really interesting stuff you've been through, for your journalism career. And so, before we get into all the stuff that I want to talk about, maybe just tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up
Sure.
doing
Yeah.
what you're
So
doing.
I started this whole career first as an anthropologist, and then I quickly learned that I could do the same stuff as anthropology, which is studying about cultures and people around the world, in journalism, where I could have a lot more people read the stuff that I do. And I got my start mostly as a foreign correspondent based in India, where I covered everything from war to organized crime, to my first book, which is about organ trafficking. So that was me sort of doing some pretty hard-hitting research in things that really have nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. But suffice it to say that my roots come from very hard-hitting investigative journalism in some of the most dangerous, unlikely corners of the planet. I wrote a book called The Red Market, which was about the global trade in human bodies and body parts. The next book was called A Death on Diamond Mountain, which I've re-released as The Enlightenment Trap, which was, essentially how meditation can kill you. Is what that was about. It was like all this dark side of people who get caught up in spiritual flim-flam and certain practices that then sort of drive them crazy and put them into a very difficult position. And I did that for a long time. And along that path, one of the things that I sort of like ended up doing a lot of was debunking these false gurus who show up all around the world. False fitness gurus, false like spiritual gurus, people who often try to sell you on superpowers, sell you on this idea that you can be almost magical in one way or another. And that sort of leads me into what we're going to be talking about today, is that I heard about this dude named Wim Hof, who is called the Iceman. And this was back in 2010, 2011, when I saw this picture of him. He's like a 50-year-old dude sitting on an iceberg somewhere north of the Arctic Circle in a bathing suit. And he had these claims that he could teach anyone to control their body temperature, to stay in ice water basically as long as they want, and do these things that frankly sounded like superpowers. So when I heard this, I was like, oh, good, got another fake guru. I'm going to go check him out and debunk him. At that point, it was going to be for Playboy magazine. And I flew out to meet him. I was one of the first people to do a serious article on Wim Hof. And what happened was, instead of finding out that he was this total crazy charlatan man, actually his methods worked, and they worked quickly. And I started doing all the same things that he was doing in the matter of a week. And I was just startled, and I knew I had to, tell the world about it, first in some articles in Playboy, and then more recently in this book, What Doesn't Kill Us.
Wow. So first of all, I love that you're trying to debunk these charlatans, because one of my biggest frustrations as a fitness professional, I've been doing this for all in all over 20 years, and it just drives me crazy when people are just looking to make a quick buck off of ignorance of people. They don't know, and so there's always a program, a pill, a product, something that claims ridiculous results, and people buy it without fail. So
Totally.
I don't have the energy to become that type of person, like a crusader, like it almost sounds like you've done, but it drives me crazy. So I love the fact that you're doing that. And so how much time did you spend with Wim in all?
So I've known Wim since 2011, and like in his presence, like physically hanging out with Wim, maybe about a month, but we talk all the time on like WhatsApp and things like that. So I feel like I know him incredibly well. Just over the years, we have a pretty deep relationship and a very healthy respect for each other. One which I'll note is I'm not I don't give him carte blanche. I don't see him as like the new Messiah or anything. What I see him as is a really fascinating guy who opened up the way to thinking about the body in new directions. But I'm also very clear that right now, especially since he's become this like international man of mystery, like he is totally blown up from essentially a clown when I met him to this guy who's on Tony Robbins and on major news programs, and he's like sort of does the lecture circuit. And I still see him as this like really crazy madman person who also has this very prophetic and amazing message. And I hold those two things in balance, because I do not think Wim is a role model. I don't think Wim is someone that you should try to emulate. I think that he's crazy. But as a messenger and getting this out, there's really no one better than him for that. So I had this sort of dualistic approach to him. And I'm very worried about a trend that has shown up probably in the last 3 or 4 years, where people are going out to him right now and calling him a guru, are calling him someone who's special and like magical, and I find it horrifying, actually. And to some degree, I think Wim finds it horrifying too, but it's sort of blowing up around him. So I see my role as partially to tell the world, hey, God, oh my God, this is amazing and this stuff works. One, and two, oh my God, please don't fall into the cult.
Yeah, and he's not a freak in nature, right? He doesn't have something that we don't. He's just a regular guy. Actually, he looks almost like he's like a homeless person. He's just kind of scraggly and,
right.
But one would think, oh, he's got, some form of, genetic advantage over us because he can do all this stuff in the cold and, most of us can't, type of thing. And you've debunked that, right?
Totally. And so when I was, first seeing him, when I first heard about him, right, at the point of life that I think I was like 30. What am I, 38? I was like 31 or 32 at that point. And, I was, out, I just finished my 20s where everything was sort of easy and healthy, right? And I was getting my little pot belly and sort of looking around and being like, well, if I just do a modicum of exercise and dip into the organic foods aisle, I'll be able to live out my life in the way that Americans do. And when I saw him, I think part of me was also saying, hey, this guy's, part of my like sort of ire about him was like, why does this guy get to do this crazy stuff with his body? And I've already sort of resigned myself to this direction of sort of unfitness. And meeting him sort of allowed me to sort of, after I started seeing his method work, I started getting more fit. I started getting more interested in exercise because it gave me a new perspective on that. And now I feel like I've taken your question and taken it to a different direction, and I've forgotten your actual question. So you'll have to repeat it for me.
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. It was just about him being a freak in nature,
right.
And the fact that he's not. He's just a regular guy that's trained his mind to do things that we don't.
Right. So here's the what I learned from him, right, is that the things that Wim Hof is able to do, which are hang out in the ice water for an incredible long period of time, make conscious control over his immune system, which I think we're going to get into later, and and sort of just generally increases resilience. These are not superpowers. What they are human powers that all of us are born with. And he just found a way to interact with his body to accentuate them, those outputs. And it's essentially a different type of exercise. If you think about using your weights, you're lifting weights, and that essentially is stress on your muscles for your muscles to get the message, oh my God, I'm gonna have to lift more stuff later. I better get stronger. And you're sending that message to your muscles. What Wim is doing is putting you in stressful environmental conditions like ice water or cold showers, or his breathing method teaches you how to hold your breath for a long period of time. He puts you in these stressful conditions that improve autonomic parts of your nervous system, things that you don't have conscious control over. And over time, as you give yourself this controlled stress, you get healthier, you get fitter. You change the way your metabolism works, and it's a lot like exercise. But it's not just the body that you're working with, right? And putting yourself in cold water or whatever. It's also this mental control that you learn about that interaction between you and the environment.
Sure, and I would argue that it's far more challenging to do what he does than actual physical activity, or in my opinion, it doesn't take a lot of skill to go to a gym, push around some heavy weights, that kind of stuff. But the thought of taking a freezing cold shower or sitting and meditating in absolute silence for more than a minute, in my case, is a test of will that I probably at this stage would really, really struggle with.
I think it's different strokes for different folks. For me, the idea of going into a gym and working out for an hour is like torture, and I'd much rather hang out in an ice bath. Personally, I mean, I think you end up finding the joy in the things that you start engaging in, and I don't think Wim is the only path to fitness by any stretch of the imagination. But what it does do is starts you thinking about the environments that you live in. Like, we as humans, as our species, has been around for about 300,000 years, according to the latest archaeological evidence, right? And in that time, we had constantly varying environments. You're in sub-Saharan Africa, it gets to 110 in the day and it drops down to 50 at night. And, it's going up and down. And our ancestors had, fire, some hunting gear, maybe some rudimentary clothing. But essentially, in order to endure those changes in environment, it was our bodies that were constantly adapting. It got cold and we would burn more calories in order to heat ourselves up. It would get really warm and we would perspire more, and we'd have different strategies biologically to deal with the environment. Now, what has happened in the last, say, 100 years is that we have gotten so technologically advanced that those natural variations that we evolved with, that our body always took for granted, are now gone. That they're just not there. We live in essentially perpetual summer. If you're in America, it's 72 degrees all year round. It doesn't matter if it's a snowstorm or a heat wave outside. You have air conditioning or central heating to keep you warm. Or when you go outside, you're wearing polar fleece or super breathable clothing. We're now relying on these external things to keep us in comfort, instead of saying, hey, why don't we experience a little discomfort for a little bit, and then our bodies will adapt to a changing environment, and that will allow our bodies to actually do the things that they evolved to do in the first place. And once you learn that it's really not hard to start doing that, it becomes sort of fun in a way, right? It becomes sort of fun when we're talking about cold. I used to do this thing where I would go for runs around my house. I live in Denver, and it's winter and it's snowing, and I'll run around the block in just a pair of running shorts and some shoes, and that's it. And it'll be like 10 degrees or 3 degrees outside, and bare chested, and everyone would look at me like, A, who's this freaking crazy guy running around? Yep. And B, I get all these crazy high fives because people are like, yeah, look at him, he's awesome. You get these two different things. And while there, other runners are dressed in like polar fleeces, and there's the earmuffs, and the setup. You know what the winter runner looks like. And then there's this naked guy basically running around, and I was warm because I'm running. right? I'm actually moving. There's calories being burned in my body. I'm getting warm on the inside, and my skin is a little cold, but it actually doesn't feel bad. And those people in their fleeces, they're cold the second they get out of the door, and then they warm up and they're boiling in their outfits because the heat can't escape. And it just requires a little bit of perspective to say, look, instead of running and doing exercise and trying to be comfortable in the moment of the change, in the moment where I go from one environment to another, I'm going to try to be comfortable with it in 5 minutes after I'm in that environment. I will endure 5 minutes of like whatever, and then I will be good. And then you have this like huge adrenaline release, this wonderful feeling of connection to the outside world, which a lot of us just don't get anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely want to get into that stuff. But I want to hear first, kind of the introduction to Wim. So when you went about doing this, I know the story, but I'll have you share it, where you flew overseas and ended up doing this crazy climb. And I guess that was how you got started with all of that.
Right. So I flew out to Poland and I met Wim. And, as you said, he's not an impressive figure when you first meet him. He's not the most attractive guy. He's not going to be on the cover of any like sort of model magazines. He had big scraggly beard, big ruddy nose from, that looks like he'd had years of alcoholism. He's got a pointy green hat that makes him look like a garden gnome. He's not that tall, and he smells bad. and when I met him, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the easiest guy to debunk ever. And I had just been living in Long Beach, California, so perfect summer all year round. Before that, I was in India, so obviously hot all the time. And we fly to Poland, and this is like the middle of the winter. I think, as I recall, this is like early January there, in the middle of the winter that stops the Nazi army. Really cold. And we drive out to his training center, and I'm talking with him, and he's just talking like nonsense. He's saying stuff like, I'm going to win the Nobel Prize, and I'm going to win the war on bacteria, and we're changing science. And he's saying all these things that are like so grandiose, and coming from this guy who's frankly crazy looking, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here for a week? And we get out of his training center, and it's this dilapidated farmhouse in the Polish mountains in a place called Proszeka, and it's like two stories. It's heated by like a coal furnace, like where you actually have to shovel coal into the furnace. There's like coal dust coming up from these like rickety floorboards with huge gaps in them, and there's only this is like the first training session that he actually ever ran. Like I was on the ground floor. It was only me and two other dudes who had signed up for this thing, and one guy was from Croatia, one guy was from Latvia. And when I get up to the upstairs where the bunk area is, I look out the back window onto this snowy field, and I see this dude standing in the snow, throwing snow on his like bare chest. He's just in his underwear, and there's steam coming off of his body. And I was like, what the hell am I looking at? Like it didn't compute, because I was freezing there. And there's this contrast of a guy who's like, whatever, not only will I be out in the cold, I'm going to rub snow on me. And it looked crazy. And honestly, I didn't have any desire to go do that at that time, although the people I was with did. That night, I started hanging out with Wim. I think we played a game of chess. I play chess, he plays chess, and we were, there were just a few of us. So we were playing chess, and I think we were drinking whiskey, and he's like, Scott, you must do the training with me, because as a journalist, I could theoretically just sit there and watch it right from the outside. He's like, you must do the training with me. And it just will change your life. And he knew I was there to debunk him. Like he's not an idiot. He'd read the stuff that I'd done. And I just had this sense from him that for whatever his insanity, there was something truly sincere about his beliefs. Despite the crazy talk, all of that stuff, there's something that's really actually quite pure at the center of him, that you sort of have to, dig your way through the words to get to. And I don't know, there was just something about it. I was like, well, you know what? If I'm going to debunk you, I'm going to give you a fair shot. And he says, and the next morning we woke up, And the first thing he teaches is this breathing method. This is before the cold. We sit in this yoga room. We're in sleeping bags because the house is poorly heated, and you learn to breathe. And the method is actually fairly simple. Right? It's you hyperventilate, or actually you superventilate, they call it. So it sounds like this. And you do like 30 or 40 of those breaths. And then at the end of doing that, and you're lying down, it's very important you lie down. And if anyone who's doing this and is listening to the podcast right now and who's driving or riding your bike, do not copy this. Do not do this. You could hurt yourself. You can pass out. If you do not do this with water, do not do this while swimming because you'll drown for sure, because people have drowned doing this. Don't be an idiot. Do this lying down safely on a yoga mat somewhere. Or in your bed. So as doing this breathing, at the end of that breathing, then you exhale and then you hold your breath. And then you hold your breath as long as you can. And we're holding stopwatches. And the first time I do that, I hold my breath for a minute. And that's sort of weird because before then, I could probably hold my breath for 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And this really changed that time on the clock for me. I was like, oh, that's cool. We do 3 or 4 more sessions of just 30 breaths, holding breath, 30 breath, holding breath. And all of a sudden, I'm holding it for like 2.5 minutes at the end of that. And that was really cool. That was like, oh, my God. Something's changing. I don't know what it is, but something's changing. I'm enjoying it. And then he said, okay, we're going to do one more round of breathing. Same thing. Hyperventilate and hold your breath. And you exhale when you hold your breath. And now I want, instead of just sitting there, I want you to do push-ups. I want you to sit over and just do push-ups and see how many push-ups you can do while holding your breath with empty lungs. And I knew beforehand that I could do about 20 push-ups. I did push-ups occasionally. 20 push-ups is not impressive, but hey, it's where I was. Please don't make fun of me. I did his breathing. I flipped over. I started doing push-ups, and I did 40 while breath out, and they were easy. And this is one of those things where there's a very and I don't think we're going to go into it here, but there's a very obvious biological reason why this works. You've tricked your body in various ways. But emotionally, what I felt was, oh my God, he just made me breathe funny. And now I've like doubled my physical output. What else is possible? And it gives me this sort of charge. This, oh my God, this is going to be really cool. And it was this first peak that you could just do these little, you could call them body hacks because that's a really popular word these days, but you just do these techniques and things change quickly. The second half of the method is standing in the cold. It's getting into a cold environment that is stressful, that is painful to some degree, and then learning to be comfortable in it. In this case, it was just going outside in our skivvies and standing in the snow. And he said, the first time you do this, ain't gonna lie, it's going to hurt. It's not going to be comfortable, no superpowers to be expected right now. And true to his word, you go outside, I'm standing in the snow. It's like, I don't know, pretty darn cold outside. And I last 5 minutes. And it was the first time I'd ever put my feet in the snow. And, it felt like hot coals. It felt like it was just so painful to be in the snow. But you have to do it. You have to get through this. There's no damage that's going to come from 5 minutes in the snow, but you're sort of encountering your pain at that point and noticing your pain and saying, I'm going to get through it. I'm going to get through this pain. And more than that, he's like, you have to relax. You have to find it in yourself to relax in this, because honestly, the stimulus you're getting is not fatal. Your body's telling it's going to kill you, but it's not, I promise. And true to his word, it didn't. It just hurt like hell. And when you go inside, it hurts even more, because then you go from cold to hot and your veins pop open, because the arteries pop open. When you're in the cold, all the arteries close. That's called vasoconstriction. And when and it's trying to put your blood in your core. That's just a mammalian response. Then you go out into the hot, you go vasodilation, and suddenly all of those arteries open up and all that warm blood circulates through cold tissue, and that hurts a hell of a lot. So I'm not selling this. I get it. Everyone's like, well, fuck this guy, right? I don't want to talk.
Yep.
But the next time you do it, we do the breathing, and I'm holding my breath for long periods of time, and I'm doing more push-ups, and I do it's really great. The next time I'm standing in the snow, the next day, before that feeling of like horror sets in, It took me 5 minutes the first day. The second day, it's 10 minutes before that same feeling of, oh my God, this is terrible, sets in. And then when I'm inside and vasodilating, it doesn't hurt quite as bad as it did the day before. And then the day after that, I'm standing there for 20 minutes. And the day after that, it's like 40 minutes. And the day after that, I'm standing in the snow an hour and being like, yeah, the snow's fine, whatever, it's cool. And it's just amazing how fast the body adapts to that. It's amazing how fast you can go from this emotional reaction that we all have to cold. Because everyone listening to this is saying, I don't know about this guy. He might be able to handle the cold, but me especially, I can't handle it. It's especially bad for me. And all of you are having excuses going through your mind right now saying, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and I am extremely susceptible to this. It's not true. I was exactly the same way, and everyone I've ever talked to has exactly that same reaction. So over the course of that week, I find that I can not only go into this stressful environment, but sort of relax in it and be like, okay, I'm fine. I'm really not going to die. And my body is just sending these panic signals because it hasn't been exposed to it a lot before. All of a sudden, I'm able to heat myself in the cold and not have to shiver. Like I'm not tense. I'm just relaxed in it. And we end the week with this sort of like challenge, like, can we hike up a ski slope near his house? And it's called Snezhka. You can look at photos of this. But really, it's just a ski slope. In our shorts with boots, hats, and a glove, so your extremities are covered. Can you go bare-chested up this, up to the top of the mountain? And we do. It's 2 degrees out, and it takes 8 hours to hike to the top of the mountain because it's actually pretty difficult terrain. There's fresh snow coming down. And I'm burning up the entire way up that mountain, and I'm relaxed, and it feels great. And the ski patrol's coming down on the other side being like, what the hell are you guys doing? Are you guys going to kill yourselves? And no, we actually get up to the mountain, and it feels, instead of like stressful and horrible, it feels euphoric. It feels amazing to be out in the cold and be like, actually, we are evolved to adapt to these environments, and it's great. And over the next few years, I wrote that article. It was a huge success. And people were really jazzed about Wim after that. And then I continued my journey. I kept on doing the Wim Hof method, do it all every day, do the breathing, take a cold shower every day. And eventually I hiked up other mountains too. I hiked up 3 years ago, I hiked up Mount Kilimanjaro with Wim Hof, in a bathing suit, hat, gloves, and boots, while the temperature dipped down to negative 30 degrees outside.
Man, I'm sure people listening are like, there's no way you wouldn't die of frostbite or other conditions succumb to the cold, but we know
this is why you need photos. This is why you need photos, because no one believes it.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so this was done through, breathing techniques, right? Repeated cold weather exposure, and then basically your mental strength to override those systems to allow you to relax instead of freaking out.
Right. Yeah. It's a thing that, and I'm working on a follow-up book right now, but I introduced this concept in What Doesn't Kill Us, which is called the wedge. You're putting your mind as the wedge between the environment and your autonomic responses. The environment will trigger something in your body, and we can talk about vasodilation because that's very easy to talk about. You go into heat and your veins pop open, or you go into cold and your veins close. You can exercise a level of control over those things that are thought to be completely autonomic just with your mind and just by saying, don't panic. It's gonna be all right, body. You're gonna be fine. And obviously you don't jump straight into the most intense experiences. You have to build up like any exercise, but it's something that you adapt to very quickly. You see results very, very quickly with.
Wow. So, it's so interesting because like into the fight response or the adrenaline. So most people given any type of situation like that, it's automatic, right? It's boom, the adrenaline hits you, but there are people, let's call it a sociopath or someone that doesn't have any moral compass and that they have no problems doing something that would normally arouse something in somebody else. They don't have that reaction, right? So it's not physiological necessarily, right? So you can learn to do that yourself, right? So if something comes up, whether it's freezing cold temperatures or whatever, your mind has the ability to override that and push forward.
Yes, I mean, and I don't like the sociopath example because I don't think we're becoming sociopaths. But I do think what happens is that we have this emotional reaction to every sensory stimulus that ever happens. And this is something, again, this isn't really in What Doesn't Kill Us. This is more in the next book that I'm writing. But I really delved into the neuroscience behind sensation, and it's totally fascinating. And to give you just a very quick rundown of it, is when you sense something for the very first time in your life, so you've never sensed this thing before, and we could say cold, but we could also say sex or sleep or sensory deprivation or anything really, any sense or like feathers on your skin. Anything you sense for the very first time enters through the peripheral nervous system, so through the nerves in the body, and enters in the lowest part of your brain. That's where it goes. That's where the paths go first. And the lowest parts of the brain essentially deal with just volume control. How intense is this sensation which is coming in? It doesn't have any other information other than intensity and sort of a tag saying, the feeling of that sensation on the skin. From there, the body then kicks this sensation up to a slightly higher area of the brain, where it bonds that sensation with your current emotional state at that time of that sensation. And so if you're in a really happy place right now, that bonds it to that sensation is now a good sensation. And it goes in and it sort of files it away and says, that is feather on skin. Okay. Now, the next time you feel that same thing, that feather on the skin or that cold or whatever it is, the body does not it bypasses that initial finding of the sensation. It does not go through just the volume control. It just goes right to that emotional reaction you had at that first place, and it reaccesses that information, and it says feather on skin is happy because I was happy when that happened. Therefore, this is a happy sensation. Cold was negative because I was having a negative experience at that time for a variety of reasons. And unless you find a way to recode your system, which these methods do, you always reaccess that. And you always look at that thing that you're always reliving your past instead of experiencing the present moment.
Yeah, it's interesting concept. I just thought of like when people do the polar plunge, because of the environment and it's such a positive setting, and then people are perceiving that freezing cold ocean water or wherever they're jumping into as more of a positive experience. So, what I like about this is, and I want to talk about, cold weather or cold water benefits in a second. But it can be a metaphor for anything that we don't like, anything that's uncomfortable, because God forbid we do something that's out of our comfort zones, or, this can be applied to so many different areas of our lives. And it's so powerful.
Right. And comfort is one of these things which is so seductive in our life, and it infiltrates really everything, right? Comfort isn't, the way I look at it, comfort's not a thing. Like, it's hard to describe what comfort is in itself. Instead, the way we define it is what comfort isn't, what discomfort. We know we're comfortable when we're not uncomfortable. And you can find that if you're in your lazy boy and you see your lazy boy as comforting, but you stay in your lazy boy a really long period of time, all of a sudden that lazy boy is incredibly uncomfortable. So the comfort was not in the lazy boy, right? The comfort was in your reaction to that environment that you were inhabiting. And this is like a really important skill to understand, is that as we remove ourselves from the environment and remove things from a negative stimulus, something that makes us want to leave it, we have a narrower bandwidth of what actually is comfortable, because we actually start excluding all parts of the world. All of this area that we could inhabit is now sort of, it's uncomfortable. It's not like it's dangerous, right? It's not like it's deadly. And I want to be very clear, not everyone should be sitting on icebergs right now. This is not the iceberg podcast. This is really just saying expand your comfort zone. And the reason why I climbed these mountains was to show you what is possible with the body, right? And as a non-athlete, like I was the dude with the growing dad bod here. Like I am not super athlete Laird Hamilton or Brian McKenzie or any of these people. I am investigative journalist who has some cool ideas and is willing to put myself in some difficult spots. and once you start realizing, hey, a little discomfort actually leads to more comfort in the end, the whole game changes.
Yeah, and that's what's so great about this is you're, like you just said, you're a regular guy. You're not an extreme athlete, and so we can look at your situation, what you went through, and apply it into our own lives. And I just thought of David Goggins. I don't know if you know his name. He's a retired Navy SEAL, but he does. He says, if it doesn't suck, I don't do it. So his whole philosophy is every day he pushes himself to do stuff that sucks because that's where the growth is, right? There's no growth in staying stagnant or staying comfortable. So he's out there doing this kind of stuff, right? Running in freezing temperatures, the heat, like just doing the things that nobody wants to do because, we're so comfortable. Like me, I love hot showers. I love hot baths. The thought of cold showers is terrifying. I mean, I've run a few challenges with my groups, my men's groups, where we do cold challenge showers, and it's probably the least popular one, even worse than burpees, because it sucks. I mean, even if you do it for a minute, 2 minutes, because we haven't learned how to override that and change the way we think about it. And it's like, well, this is freezing. This really sucks. I don't want to do that again. The end.
Well, I will say that there's an element of wisdom to saying I will go out and I don't want to do it unless it sucks. But I also think that there's a trap in that, which is that the suck is the goal. I think the goal is not the suck. I think the goal is to say I'm doing something challenging and I'm learning to love it. Because there's a lot of things that suck in this world that I don't want to do just for growth, right? What I'm trying to do is learn to love the expansion of my abilities in these new things. And there are, of course, challenges. But if at the end of the day that challenge doesn't become fulfilling, doesn't become there's not like a positive uptake from that is emotional as well as just a stat on some fitness app that you have, then it's not really worth it. It's not, like we're living this life so that we can have good experiences, and you don't just want to have negative ones in order to have some sort of like arbitrary goal. We're doing this because we want to live good, happy, healthy, strong lives, and doing things that are challenging and that can be uncomfortable lead to comfort, lead to growth. And I think it's really just it's just a different way of wording the same concept as Goggins is saying. But I don't like languages like this workout will destroy your abs, right? I mean, that doesn't do anything for me because it's like, I don't want my abs destroyed, right? I want my abs to get stronger.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, I think David Goggins is an extreme example. He's just got that mentality where it's got to suck. I mean, he's in the minority for sure, but he just that's part of his personality is to do that. But so this isn't this show isn't intended to sell anybody on cold benefits of cold, but I am fascinated by it because it's first it's easy, right? I mean, anybody can go outside in the cold. Anybody can put together an ice bath or a cold shower. So
and
tell
free.
me, yeah, I mean,
It's
exactly
cheap.
right. Yeah, exactly. And funny enough, one of the most successful challenges that I've had within my groups was based on intermittent fasting, which is also free. You're just limiting the time in which you eat. So it's not some fancy diet program or some supplement. It was completely free. So, what are some of the benefits? We could all Google, benefits of this stuff, but what are some of the things that you noticed personally after going through some of this?
Well, there's a couple ways to answer this. I will say that at the beginning of my book, I did some measurement, and in general, I'm not a huge fan of measurement. I think that emotional reaction and how you feel is way more important than what shows up on a device afterwards. But people like measurement, so I did it, and I went to the Boulder Sports Recreation Center, which is a very nice. No, it's not sports recreation. It's Boulder. Anyway, it's a Boulder-based athletic-y lab. That's the technical word, right? And they put me through a stress test where it was basically you wear a mouthpiece and that measures what you're blowing off as you're running, and they make it an increasingly difficult running challenge while they're monitoring everything in your body. And you can look at all the results in my book. But essentially what happened was I kept my workout routine, which was at that point, I think I was running a 3-mile run 3 times a week. That was just what I was doing. And I did some like moderate hiking and whatever, but I kept my activity level the same throughout this entire 6-month process that I was tracking things. Except I added 2 things. I added cold weather workouts. So I would basically work out in my skivvies outside. I added a 15-minute breathing protocol every morning, which is the Wim Hof breathing, and I took cold showers. And that's really all I changed in my workout. And the actual athletic outputs were the same otherwise. When I remeasured myself 6 months after doing this, the scientist who was studying me saw that I had switched from a primarily carb burning person to a primarily fat burning person, which is good. And then also it was as if the metabolic changes had added 8 hours of additional cardio exercise to my routine than what I had actually been adding. So this like 15 or 20-minute program every day actually was exponentially more valuable than the running was. And it's because the environment really trains you, and it trains you in ways that you don't get from exercise.
Huh. And I read somewhere that you say you lost 7 pounds of fat in 7 days. And so, most fitness pros, or anybody that's ever read anything about fat loss would say, well, that's physiologically impossible to lose 7 pounds of actual fat in 7 days. But so when did that happen for you?
So that happened in Wim's training program. I've had a lot of people write in about that actual line in my book. And I didn't do the before and after measurement with like a $20,000 lab experiment. So, and some of this is, it's me doing my best with what I had, which was a scale and a mirror and whatever else is available to me, and also looking at my stools at that point, which were actually really greasy and weird, and I do not know why. But yeah, I was noticeably trimmer. I was 7 pounds lighter on the scale, and after doing Wim's 1-week training program, and it's because. What happens is when you're in the cold, you can deal with the cold in 2 ways. You can shiver, which is basic muscle energy, or if you're in the cold and you're relaxing and you're not allowing your muscle to shiver, what it does is it switches to a fat burning program, and it burns white fat as heat energy, and it just it converts that directly to heat, and it does this through this. Maybe you've heard of brown fat or brown adipose tissue, which is essentially a metabolic stove in your body, which is composed of mitochondria-rich fat tissue. It hangs out in your shoulders and along your spine, and which is interesting because if you feel cold, if you think about what it's like to feel cold, you usually tense that area of your back, right? You tense your shoulders and your spine, and that's where brown fat is activated. That's probably an innate response for you to actually be triggering that stuff without you even realizing it. And over just a very short period of time, I learned to go from a shiverer to a non-shiverer who was warm while relaxed.
Okay. So, all right. So, when looking at that statement, so I'm still thinking about the 7 pounds. So you don't know for sure it wasn't calibrated by some fancy DEXA scan or bod pod or whatever underwater weighing. Yeah. But let's just assume, because I don't want anybody to think, wow, he must be a quack if he's saying that he lost 7 pounds of fat. So, what I like to talk about is virtually everything we read online, whether it's from a quote-unquote credible source, chances are it's some bodybuilding guru, some fitness pro. Most of these guys are marketers, right? Very little is actual research, science. Most of it, they call it bro science. So everybody you used to think eat 5 to 6 small meals a day. That's how you stoke the furnace of your metabolism. Everyone says you can only lose 2 pounds of, 1 to 2 pounds of actual fat per week. So everybody knows that kind of thing. But how many people actually researched and looked at the actual science and said, hey, it's impossible to lose 7 pounds of fat in 7 days? That's where I was just going with that is we don't know for certain. None of us have researched this and gotten a definitive answer. We're just going on what we read, and everybody regurgitates the same fitness information online over and over and over, and it becomes quote unquote a fact, right? Or science, but it's really not.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scientific questions going on out there in the fitness industry. There is so much data out there that has been measured, but it's come from so many different types of sources, so many different agendas behind the sources. If you look at people out there trying to sell, how many fitness gurus out there have their own line of like protein powder that's going to make you super fit? How many coffees are out there that are going to make you much more brilliant than you are? How many nootropics exist that are going to change your life? I mean, there's usually, I'm not going to say always, there's usually an element of truth. A study with 12 people that said this works, or a sensation or something, but there's rarely the real established billion-dollar studies to go tell you what actually is happening. Because if you look at real industrial science when it's doing, it's very expensive. And we're trying to answer questions that we actually don't even have the resources to answer, but we're hoping that our intuitions are right. And this is a problem that goes way beyond this fitness industry, way beyond my book, way beyond anything, is that to actually do the research on how the body works, we would need like 100 years and hundreds of billions of dollars of research dollars that are not going into this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So in your book, is this a blueprint for others to kind of follow along, or is this just more along the lines of your experiences and observations on this path?
It can be a blueprint. I really think that anyone can do the stuff that I do, because I do not consider myself an exceptional athlete. I do not consider myself anything out of the ordinary, although very high-performing athletes do use these things. Where I see it, though, as it's something that anyone can do at any fitness level and get immediate benefits from, that they can feel immediately. And on top of that, it's free. You don't need to buy my book. You don't need to go buy Wim Hof's whatever $100 and some odd course. We're not going to sell you a supplement that comes in your mail every day. You can literally go onto a YouTube video, learn the breathing patterns, and do it lying down and not swimming or driving a car or farm machinery, right?
Yep.
And feel the change. Like it's so obvious, and just go do it. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to feel a little chilly. The worst that's going to happen is you're going to feel uncomfortable for a little bit. And if you can't, and let's go back to your Goggins guy for a moment. If you can't suck it up, then what are we doing here? Right?
Yeah, exactly. So at what point does the human body start to succumb to frostbite? Like, how long can we last in the snow with no shirt before we actually have a reaction and have a serious problem?
Oh, I really want to go pick up a copy of my book right now, because I have that chart in the back.
Okay.
And it's not within hand's reach. But
Right.
There's a table that has been studied very extensively in the military and high altitude science that gives you this length of time, bare flesh exposed, you will get frostbite. And I will say those are probably more like guidelines than hard and chiseled facts, because I was up there at -30 feeling fine without frostbite. So I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. And I know that there are limits, though. Like, I know that there's a point where you can reach when you're like, okay, I'm going to be in danger unless I turn around. And you do have to listen to your body, especially when you're on the sort of extreme end of things. But it's a lot farther out than you're expecting right now as you listen to this podcast in your office or car with your seat heater on or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm thinking back to earlier. So you hiked Mount Kilimanjaro in your shorts. And that's over 19,000 feet.
Yes.
So, and you did it in 2 days, which normally takes, right? Is that right?
I did it in 28 hours.
Okay.
So that is not a world record on this, but it's incredibly fast. And the world record was established by a guy who was already adjusted to the altitude. He had actually spent a significant amount of time at the peak, and then came down and then ran back up. And it was Kilian Jornet, I believe, is the current holder. There might be another one too, and they can do it in six hours. Like the fastest ultra runnery people can do it, and they smoke me. However, one, they cheated because they acclimatized first, and two, yeah, I mean, actually, that is it. They acclimatized first, and what we did is we came from ground level, which was, I think it's like 3,000 at the bottom, somewhere around that, up to the top. And when we told the U.S. Army about what we were going to do, and there were 28 people in the group, they said 80% of us, around 80% of us, would succumb to altitude sickness, which is essentially where you don't have enough oxygen in your limbs and your body starts to shut down. Now, when we asked the Dutch Mountaineering Association, what happens if we go up, and I think we were aiming at 32 hours, they said we would have 100% fatality rate.
Really?
And that's like right before we go up, right? And we're like, oh, nice. That sounds bad. But I made it up. There were actually there were sort of stragglers. We've split up into 3 groups. But my group, which is the first 3 people up, made it in 28 hours, which like mind-boggling, because it's supposed to take you 5 days to get up there when you acclimatize steadily as you go up. What we were doing is we were doing that breathing that I told you earlier, the with no retention. There was no holding your breath. And we just did that the entire 28 hours to compensate for the difference in available oxygen to us. And it worked. It was amazing. And we could see the results as we're going up. As you're at like 17,000 feet and the world starts closing in and getting darker and darker. I do the breathing, I breathe harder, and all of a sudden it brightens up again and I feel great. Like it's absolutely obvious that this works and that there's a direct relationship between breath and your ability to tolerate altitude. And this has a lot of applications for anyone who does like mountain climbers, military, anyone who's up there. You don't actually need Diamox. You don't actually need these other things. All you need is a perseverance and the desire to do it.
So you weren't using supplemental oxygen?
Nothing like that. Nothing.
Wow.
No Diamox, no supplemental oxygen, all just like heavy breathing. That's all we used.
Wow. I mean, that's a feat in itself. And like you said, you're not an elite athlete by any stretch.
No.
So yeah, that's amazing. I definitely want to read your book. Actually, I went to order it, and the soft copy wasn't available yet. Only the hard copy. I just hate, for some reason, I hate hardcover books.
I hear you.
And so I'm waiting. I think it's not for another month or so or something like that, like December.
Well, if you like the dulcet sounds of my voice, there's an audiobook. It's on Audible and iTunes and all that stuff. And if you get it off my Twitter profile, I actually get a few bucks off of that, where I don't on the other way. I don't really care a ton. Like, get it however. I really want people to read it.
Yeah.
But I do get more money if you go off the link off my Twitter profile.
Okay.
And it'll be in paperback on December 11th. It's also available in libraries. People don't realize this, but libraries are everywhere and they're free and they're an amazing resource. And by all means, get it from the library too.
Yes, I have one a quarter mile from my house that I use quite frequently. I love it.
Yeah, just don't pirate it because that feels crummy.
Agreed. So yeah, this is fascinating, and actually, I'll put a link to your Twitter profile and anywhere else you would like. And where do you want people to find you? So when I put in the show notes, I want to make sure that people can find out, more about you, what you do, your talks, your books, all that good stuff.
So my website is scottcarney.com, SCOTTCARNEY.com. You throw me into Google, I show up. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, all the places you might find a guy like me or anyone else for that matter. SG Carney. I don't know what else is there to say.
That's it.
You should be able to find me if you know how to use the internet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're the first person that comes up when you Google Scott Carney. But I will tell everybody listening that I've watched quite a few TEDx talks, and to be honest, a lot of them they're just kind of boring. But you have a way of storytelling that's actually interesting, like you're funny and humble. And so it actually kept my attention, and I watched, quite a few of them, different talks and different pieces. So very, very real. So for those listening, definitely check it out. Check out those talks. And I'm definitely going to get your book. I want to read this whole story. I'm not ready to take on Wim Hof or anything like that, but is there anything that you could tell somebody listening, just a couple of easy steps to get started down the path through this?
There's two. You can learn the breathing method. Just Google it. You'll find something on YouTube that gives it to you for free. Just do it. It takes you 15 minutes. Do it lying down. Don't be an idiot. And then the other thing that's super simple, a great way to start, we're getting into winter right now. When you are in your house and you're contemplating going outside of your house, there will be a temperature change. Do not dress for the inside of your house. Do not try to say, I'm going to continue my current temperature. Go outside and wear one less layer than you think you should wear, and feel a little bit chilly. What that is, that chilly sensation, is not the sensation of impending death that your body thinks it is. What it actually is the sensation of your metabolism turning on. And realize that. Think about that before you go outside and say, I'm going to feel a little chilly. It might be a little bit uncomfortable, but what it actually is beneficial for me in the long run. And relax into it. Try to relax. And then, if you need to go back inside, that's fine. You can do it. But at least you're feeling those sensations. And that's really the beginning of this training. Another thing you can do, which is super simple, is in the morning, take your shower. Do a normal hot shower. And wash yourself. Get clean. And then at the end of that shower, do the most difficult thing a human has ever done in the history of humanity, and turn around and turn that knob to the coldest position it can handle. And do that for like a minute. Do a minute. Why not? And sit there, and instead of focusing all your energy on tensing every bit of your body, which is of course what you want to do that for only a second or two, and then relax, and then realize that after a minute or two, you're fine. Or after actually probably 10 or 20 seconds, you're fine. And try to subsume that tendency to panic that we all have, and just let that go and just relax. And I promise you that no person has ever died in the history of humanity from a 1-minute cold shower. It's never below 32 degrees if it's falling on you. You're going to be fine.
Yep. Yeah, good point. So, yeah, this has been interesting, really interesting, and I can't wait to dig into it a little bit more. And, if you're willing at some point down the road, I would love to do a follow-up show, because we never even got to talk about meditation. In one of your books, you don't talk about how to meditate. It's more about the dark side of meditation.
Right.
And I know you've had some really powerful experiences when it comes to that. Right. And that's an area that I struggle with. I find it almost impossible to just sit still and meditate. And but I did love to hear more about that whole world and what you've gone through there. So maybe we can reconnect in the future and have that discussion. Yeah,
love to. I have a lot to say about that. That's very different than what we just talked about. It's
yes, indeed.
And here's what kills you.
Exactly. So yeah, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, and a lot to think about.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us. And remember, if you want more information, check out the Fit Dad Basecamp group on Facebook. And don't forget to stop by fitdadnation.com. Until next time, keep kicking ass and taking the next step. You can do this, Dad.